Hello, this is Derek Biltfeld from Acceleration Strategy. Today we'd like to do a little walkthrough and really understand the essence of a closed-loop customer experience management system. What am I talking about when I say a closed-loop customer experience management system? It sounds like a real mouthful, but really it's quite simple. It's the process whereby you have an interview or some level of feedback from a key stakeholder, customer, resident, member, employee, partner, broker, any of those people, and we say, did they say something that we need to get back to them on? And if they did, can we be sure that we actually got back to them? The benefit of that is not only does your organization get more customer centric, it also provides you an ability to drive continuous improvement both at the employee or the frontline customer facing point as well as organizationally. So I'm going to take you through that pictorially, and then we're going to do a little demonstration of exactly how that works. So first, we'll start with the interview. In the interview or the feedback mechanism or the website intercept, you're going to get a bit of information about a person who you have an important relationship with. You have a system under the covers that takes a look at that and says, that looks like we should be taking action. Maybe we need to follow up. Maybe we need to celebrate a win. Whatever, an alert goes to a senior manager who has the greater depth of knowledge to say, here's how we should handle it. Imagine if you're the CEO and you don't get enough interaction with your front line, you can actually use this tool to constantly be in touch and constantly improve by doing a little bit of triage and coaching your front line. And every frontline employee would love to have more coaching. What we do there is that alert goes to the senior manager. They say, here's what we should do. He assigns it to the appropriate person or maybe handles it himself. That person calls the customer, engages appropriately to find out what they can do, or maybe just explain a policy. And then once they feel that it's been resolved, they say this has been resolved. Now, the senior manager doesn't know it's been resolved, and they need to know that. This is what we call an accountable closed loop. And so in an accountable closed loop, those people who are handling the end user issue do a quick update to say, here's how I handled it, and they close it off in the system. It goes put it into a little database, and that database is important because it does two things. It sends a note to senior management to say, this issue's been resolved. Next time you talk to that customer, check in with them, whatever. But the senior manager knows what's being resolved and how and by whom. The strategic planning team actually has the ability to farm that database both when they do their enterprise strategic planning or when they're doing a point in time project and say, hey, is anybody talking about a particular issue? We can look into this and get that kind of information. So you can see how this very simple conceptual system can drive frontline improvement, can drive greater line of sight between senior execs and what's really happening in the customer. And of course, it's really valuable for continuous improvement of your offerings and of your strategic plans going forward. So as I said, what we'll do next is we'll do a quick review of what does the interview look like, something that everybody's seen, but I'll show you a couple of interesting ideas in there. Then we'll go through the closed loop process to see how this really works in the real world. One of the most common ways of capturing feedback from your key stakeholders is going to be some form of an online interview. And typically this starts with an opening invitation. Let them know that this information is going to be used to change the company going forward. And if appropriate, you can give out an incentive or make a donation to charity, what have you. Using the Net Promoter Score model, which we'll do in this particular example, we always ask this question up front: how likely are you to recommend? And because this is B2B, you use peers and colleagues instead of friends and family. And as many of us know in the NPS space, once you deliver a score below 7, you're called a detractor, and a detractor should generate a follow-up alert. We call that a priority alert because that person has a high likelihood of having something that we need to address. So first we ask a simple question: why do you give us the score? So they typically will give you what's on the top of their mind. What is the biggest issue they particularly face if they have an issue? Or if they're very happy, they'll give you the biggest thing they think is the differentiator that you as a company provide. Now, there's an opportunity in any survey. You've got your attention now. You can ask them tons of questions. I recommend you try to keep it as small as possible, of course, but if it's critical, you should ask it. And an open end is better than closed end because you're trying to have a conversation with your stakeholder here. So The first question we often ask is, do you have any unresolved issues? Why do we ask it? Because if you have any unresolved issues, that's top of mind again. That's getting in the way of progressing in your relationship, perhaps. So we want you to take advantage of that. And we want you to get those unresolved issues on the table and addressed as soon as possible. And of course, once they type that in, you can see it's a very specific activity. Then you ask a series of questions. I like to ask about the staff because generally staff in most situations that we work with is very critical. So we ask them to rate what are those things that we think are really important in the staff. And again, in this case, I'm not very happy with the accuracy, and didn't give super high marks on professionalism or creativity, so I'm probably going to want to give you some feedback there as well. So they enter in their information from a professionalism point of view. Again, a piece of information doesn't really affect the relationship, but they've noticed it. You can correct that pretty simply. Creativity, a very specific issue around a person. And finally, accuracy, you'll see a theme develop in many of these interviews because there's an issue and it'll come up a couple of times. Then we like to ask about the offering. In this case, it's a product company, so we're asking about the specific product categories and how are we doing on those. And again, if there's one that they have a particularly low score on, you're going to be asked for some follow-up information on that. So now this is kind of useful because instead of the service person taking care of it, this is a very product-specific issue. This can actually be sent directly to product management to handle it themselves. And finally, I like to ask the questions that are around the brand value. What do you stand for, and how does this person perceive it? If your company is well perceived, if what you claim as the brand is very well perceived by all of your customers, you will find that you'll get a greater increase in your market value. So we'll go here and give them all really high marks, and maybe there's one again that's low. We don't ask about everything, but the ones that are low, we're going to ask for some follow-up information. So this information, it's not exactly specific, but it certainly can lead you into a warm conversation when you do the follow-up with this particular customer. And then if you want to, and you know exactly you have a client-specific relationship with this, so you have a rep that specifically owns this client, then I like to do a question that is asking about the specific person. That can be used to help in the coaching of that person. Maybe they're new and they need to know what they need to do better, or when they're getting a new client, you need to get through that communication phase of saying, okay, how do we work with this client really, really well? And finally, what I suggest you do is that when you're doing a survey design, it's a good idea to do a quick confirmation at the end, because your system can make mistakes, they could have made a mistake, somebody could have a spelling error, and about 30% of people move or change some critical data. So we ask them to do this themselves, and this automatically should send a note to some administrative person to take care of it right away. And they click next, and they're done. And that's how quick a survey really should be with a customer. So the next morning at 9 a.m., when the rep comes into his office, he comes in and an alert has just shown up. Clark Kent from the Bank of Metropolis is a detractor, and he needs to take action. This gives him guidance of what to do first thing in the morning. Because this is a priority alert, what we do is we actually say what the score is, what their comment is, and if they have an unresolved issue. So you can be prepared right away. But what you really want you to do is we want you to click on this icon to get into the case. And that's how most of these systems are going to work. They're going to generate an alert, an email is going to go to somebody, or it's going to go to your text or go to your smartphone. Click on it, and it's going to guide you through what you need to do and provide you additional details. So here we have what we call the closed loop system. So this is now an internal system that Acme provides to their employees. And what they can do now is Wiley, who is the owner of this particular alert, can see how many things were triggered. Here, these are called conditions of the triggers. And down here, he sees all the detail that was provided in the survey. What he needs to do is look at that and say, is this something I'm going to handle, or should I assign this to one of my employees and give them a bit of coaching? So what we're going to do here is we're going to assign it to one of my employees. All right, so any one of the reps here we can assign to. And then once we've assigned it, we need to give that a little bit of coaching in case we didn't walk in to see them. And this coaching information can be very specific to the issue. That's powerful because now the rep says, oh, I know that my management team is on top of this. I better take advantage of this. And they've given me some guidance on what to do so I can get started right away. Very powerful little one step that you want to do right now. And now, because I assigned that, this is going immediately to the person I've assigned it to. So Wile E. Coyote was the original recipient of the alert. They've read it and said, hey, when you go, before you talk to this guy, check on his billing situation, then I want you to call Clark. Now, the recipient of this, the person who this is assigned to, is going to click on managing the case, and they get right back to the same page. Only in their case, they could reassign it again if they really wanted to, but for most people are going to go straight in. They're going to accept the case, call Clark, talk to him about the issue. They're going to review all of the potential issues that he had. Okay. So this person is going to have talked to the accounting department. They know the state of the billing issue. They've read up on his record and they've read these things that he said. Then they're going to call Clark and have a conversation. So because Clark had told us the issue that he had, which was unresolved, we were prepared to resolve it right away when we got him on the phone. Therefore, he was happy and we could get into the real issue, is that his training really upset his schedule. And we need to understand what happened there before we can truly resolve this. So this is not a resolved case. And what you do is then is you put that away and you go resolve it. It might take a day or two. If you can resolve it quickly, great. But let's say we can't resolve it quickly. We go away for a day or two. Most systems are going to send you a reminder if you haven't resolved it in some certain period of time. But you can always go back and click on the button. It'll take you right back to where you were. Then you go forward. You see, what did we do last time? Oh yeah, I talked to Clark. I have to go and deal with this thing. I've dealt with it. So now you tell us what you've done to deal with it. So now we've investigated it. We knew we had a problem with the training and that it actually had a big impact on a few of his employees. So clearly the right thing to do for this customer is to step up and take care of it. So in this case, we arranged a special training for those new employees on in the week of May 20th, and now Clark is happy. So now we can say it's been resolved. And there's a confirmation there because sometimes things aren't resolved. But fundamentally, he's now been resolved. He was an unhappy detractor. Now he at least is satisfied. He's at least passive. And if you know he's super thrilled, let us know he's become a promoter. Because we use this kind of information when we do later disposition analysis down the road. Also, you want to make sure that you've captured everything, so you quickly summarize everything. And if there's anything new, you can type in some other little detail. So just before I close this case, I'm going to quickly say, hey, we also sent a note to Clark's manager so that we know this. Then we click OK. One of the other things we'd really like to know is from that frontline person, is there anything we could have done to improve this process? In this case, we realized that accounting didn't even let us know that there was a billing adjustment, so we're talking to the client without even knowing about it. If we knew about it, we could have looked into it. And then you click Edit, and it's done. And what that now does is it sends the note to the manager to say, this is resolved, and here's how it was resolved. So what we see here is the note that immediately gets sent to the manager. It's automatically generated, but it tells us that Clark Kent has been resolved by such and such. Here were the issues that had to be happened, and here's exactly how it was resolved. And if so required, we put a nice little link to the case if you want to see the details. But there's about a million different ways you could do this. But this is a quick little process that you can follow to implement a closed-loop customer experience management system. So I hope you can appreciate just how powerful this process really is. And it's more than just understanding it. The proof is in the cases. For example, we worked with TD Bank for many years, and they were the best in customer experience, best in customer satisfaction. But in about 2009, they introduced a fully accountable closed loop system. Their numbers soared, and they were rated as the most valuable company in Canada, where they actually mentioned that the consistency in their customer experience was a big driver in their brand value. Or take the other extreme, very small number of customers but high value in the case of Philips Industrial. Over several years, they looked at when they originally measured them and what their scores were afterwards, and they had a process to make sure that they were addressing every single client. Those clients that actually had an improved customer experience score increased their revenue with the company by 69% versus those that did not improve dropped by 24%. So it's really important to know where we are and trying to drive this forward. And that's what we believe a good, accountable, closed loop process will give you. And then, of course, that's not all. You do want to go farther, and when you really go farther, you get a closed loop inside the specific customer around the whole organization to say, what can we do to drive continuous enterprise level impact? And the reason you're doing this fundamentally is to drive market cap value of your company. A great study by Watermark Consulting showed that over 5 years, over 8 years, over 10 years, they saw consistent performance. Specifically, in this case, the customer experience leaders had a 69.9% higher return than the laggards in their industries. What we like to tell people is to embrace customer experience management, learn about it, come up with an intentional customer experience, and then make sure that you have a system that will drive continuous improvement both at the front line as well as engaging a larger organization in a customer experience initiative. We've been building these types of systems since 2006, and we're happy to help anybody in any way we can, so please don't hesitate to call us. Thank you.